everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I am AshleyElyse. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's video. This week I want to talk about a little bit of a controversial subject maybe. I want to talk about the truth about life postpartum. Now this is going to be based on my personal experience. Just a little bit of background for you. I only have one child. This is my first. This is my personal experience. I did have quite a lot going on that probably most people don't. I had gallbladder issues throughout my pregnancy. I had hyperemesis that I was hospitalized with. I also had a heart condition that was found during my pregnancy. So I had a lot going on. Like I said, this is based on my personal experience. Just because this is what happened for me does not mean that this is what happened for you, but this is my personal experience, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. So, the first thing that I wanted to talk about was just right after giving birth. So, right after you give birth, obviously you're going to be exhausted because it is quite a strenuous process. There is a lot that just happened. Your body is kind of in shock from everything that you just went through. So you're going to be exhausted, but you're going to be tired. You're going to be sore. For me, I did get an epidural, and I don't know how much of this was associated with the epidural versus how sick I was, but after I had Novali, I experienced a lot of, I wasn't really tired. I think I was just really on the high of everything. I was really excited. I was happy to not be pregnant anymore because of everything that I had experienced, and I was ready to just start feeling better. However, because I had the epidural, I had a lot of issues with moving around after I gave birth. For me, I kind of had feeling in the left side of my body throughout the procedure or throughout giving birth. And then on the right side, I didn't have like hardly any feeling at all. So for me, I had a lot of trouble getting feeling back in on the right side of my body, mostly in my leg. So I had a lot of trouble moving around afterwards, and I needed a lot of help. Now that was only for like the first 24, 48 hours after I had Novali. So I was already in the hospital for that time frame anyway. So it worked out pretty well for me. But that's something that you should also know is the soreness that you're going to experience after giving birth. I was watching another YouTuber's experience, and they explained it as kind of like being hit by a truck. I don't know that that was quite my experience, but I think it's probably a pretty good analogy or a great comparison, I guess you could say, that you just feel really sore, you move really slow, you can't really do things the way you want to right away. That was at least my experience. I wasn't able to do everything that I wanted to do right after giving birth. I wanted to just bounce back and be right back to normal. I wanted to do everything, but every time I would try and do things, I just got tired really, really quickly, and it was just a long process. So make sure you give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack. Everything's still going to be there in in a few weeks or a few days, few hours, whatever. It's still going to be there. It's not going to go anywhere. So give yourself a break, allow yourself time to heal. If you're OCD and a perfectionist like me, that may be really hard for you. And I understand, I completely understand, but give yourself time because it's so important. You want to focus on spending time with your baby and healing and doing everything properly. That's very, very important for not only you, but for your baby as well. So expect some soreness. If you're breastfeeding, expect even more because your nipples and your boobs are not going to be used to holding milk and things like that. You're going to have probably a lot of soreness. Some people have like cracked nipples and bleeding with breastfeeding. I didn't experience that. I did have some real soreness and irritation, but for those of you who watched my birth video, my baby was born a little bit early, so she did go into the NICU. She was perfectly fine. There really wasn't any reason for her to need to be in there other than to be monitored, and her, bilirubin and things like that. But because of that, I don't think I experienced quite as much soreness as I would have, because I started off pumping, and then we ended up switching over to breastfeeding directly from the breast once I got home. Honestly, that was probably maybe around a month or a month and a half that we started doing that with her. So it was just kind of a different experience for me than probably for most people. But I do hear a lot of people explain that they have cracked nipples and bleeding and just painful breasts. They have like engorgement, things like that. I didn't really struggle with that too much, but those are some different things that you can expect with breastfeeding as well. With breastfeeding, on that point, forgive me, mom brain, which we'll talk about here in a minute. I have a list that I'm referring to so that I can make sure I talk about everything, because I think they're all important to mention. But with breastfeeding, and again, this may not be everybody's experience, but this was mine. Letdown, whenever your milk is letting down, is incredibly painful. Now, this has let up over time for me, but at first it was like so painful. It honestly felt like someone was just squeezing, like trying to pop it. It was really, really, really painful for me. So maybe that will be the same for you. Maybe it won't. Not really sure. I don't know. I am curious for you other moms. Feel free to leave comments down below to let me know what your guys' experience is on all these different items. I'm really curious to know everybody's experience because everybody's different. No two pregnancies are the same. So keep that in mind. But so you have like that painful letdown, soreness, cracked nipples, bleeding, things like that. Another thing with breastfeeding that people probably really don't talk about is the privacy aspect. So I am all for breastfeeding, 100%. However, out in public, I think it's a nice thing to do to be considerate of others, especially when you've got children around or men, things like that. So I personally try to cover up whenever I'm breastfeeding around people. I will absolutely breastfeed my baby in front of somebody. However, I try to keep myself covered so that I don't make other people feel uncomfortable. It is not because I am ashamed or because I, don't love my body and what it can do for my child. Sorry, if you see me looking over here, I've got Novalee sleeping right now, and so I'm just watching her on the monitor to make sure she's okay. Anyway, so it's not that I'm ashamed or that anything like that, but it is because I have that respect for men and children and for other parents. Some parents don't want their kids seeing those things, and that's okay. That's fine. Every parent has that right. I have the right to breastfeed my child, so I'm going to try and do it in a thoughtful way so that I am not making other people uncomfortable or showing people things that they don't want to see. Now, that presents an issue. The other day, I decided that I was going to try to be super mom and go to Walmart and go grocery shopping, and I was going to take Novalee with me. Now, that was a struggle, let me tell you. It usually doesn't take me very long to grocery shop, maybe like 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much I have to get. This experience took me about 2.5 hours, I want to say, because I had to feed Novalee in the middle of the store. Well, I couldn't walk around and push a cart and pull a stroller at the same time while I'm trying to breastfeed my baby. So I had to really get creative, and I was kind of panicking a little bit because I didn't want to leave my cart full of groceries, and I couldn't leave the stroller because that had like my purse and her diaper bag and everything that I need, like my important stuff. So what I decided to do is I actually went to the dressing rooms, and I am so grateful to this gentleman because I asked him if I could just use one of the rooms so that I could feed my baby. And he was so sweet. He opened up the room for me. I was able to leave my stuff outside, and then once I was done feeding her and changing her, I was able to get my stuff and go right back to what I was doing. But that's something that a lot of people don't think about. They think that breastfeeding is going to be so easy. I know I did. I really thought, okay, this no problem. Just stick the baby to the boob. No big deal. Well, but you don't think about all those extra little things like being at the grocery store or being in public places and how you're going to feel about that. You don't think about the painful letdown or the sore nipples or trouble latching. A lot of parents have trouble latching their babies. Some women can't even breastfeed, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, those are things that people don't think about. They don't think about how hard it's going to be or how much you're going to have to really work at that. And that's something that I truly went into it thinking this is going to be a piece of cake. I'm going to be able to do this. No problem. That was not the case. Because she was a NICU baby and she went straight to a bottle, it was a hard transition to get her over to breastfeeding. But also at the same time, it wasn't, because I decided to just start trying it at home when she went through a growth spurt because I was exhausted and I was tired of having to pump and clean pump parts and heat up bottles and all these different things. I just wanted it to be a little bit easier on me. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and try and put her to the boob and see what she does. And she picked up pretty quick. Within a few days, she was able to latch properly. It wasn't painful anymore. At first, it was incredibly painful because she was trying to figure out how this was supposed to work, because a bottle's nipple is a lot longer than mine was. I don't know about everybody else's, but in my experience, it was a lot longer than what I had to offer her, and that was really frustrating and confusing for her. So it was a process, don't get me wrong. It wasn't some easy thing that I could just, oh yeah, let me just stick her on there and she, latches. Some parents may have that experience, but I think probably for most moms, that's not the case. So that's something to think about as far as breastfeeding goes. Like I said, grocery shopping, running errands, things like that, it becomes increasingly difficult when you have a child. You may be thinking, no, duh. Ashley, come on. Like, of course it's going to be harder. You're having this little infant. Well, I didn't think it was going to be that hard. I really didn't. I thought, okay, I'm going to keep her in her car seat. I can run errands. She'll sleep. It'll be fine. Well, when she was first born, she did sleep a lot, but now she's getting to the point where she's not sleeping quite as much, and she doesn't sleep as well when she's outside of the house. She likes to sleep in her crib or sleep where the sound is controlled and, things are to her liking. Well, that's unfortunately not always the case. You can't always work with that. You can't always make that happen for your child. And so she'll wake up and she'll cry, and you'll have experiences like I did in the grocery store or while you're out shopping, and it becomes a hassle just trying to get out of the house or to get places on time. And that just becomes your new reality. I really used to try to be really punctual for everything. Now I'm late to everything. I am never on time. If I'm on time, it is by accident. It is not because I was able to get out of the house on time. Now that Novalee is 2 months old, she's going to be 3 at the end of November. But now that she's getting older, it's getting a little bit easier because I'm getting more in the habit of doing things. But sometimes it's just not even worth going out because you're just exhausted and you're just like, is it worth trying to put her in the car seat and her crying, or is it worth trying to have to feed her while I'm out, or things like that? So it's an adjustment, and go into that knowing that. Another thing that people probably people talk about a lot that, oh, you're not going to sleep anymore. That's true, but for many different reasons. Not quite because you're like, oh, the baby's going to be crying all the time. That is true. The baby does cry. The baby wants to eat. The baby wants to be held. The baby wants to be changed, whatever. However, in my personal case, I don't ever sleep, not because she's always keeping me up necessarily. Some nights are that way, but other nights not so much. My personal experience has been that I lie awake worrying about her. She sleeps in her crib on her back. There's nothing in there. She's just wrapped in her swaddle, just like, they recommend. And I lie awake at night worrying about her. I worry, okay, is she still breathing? Is she going to throw up and choke on her vomit? Is she going to stop breathing in the middle? Like all these different things that run through my head as a new mom. And there's nothing that can make that go away. There really isn't. It's just a struggle of being a new mom and being unsure and just being concerned for your child's well-being, which is natural in my opinion. But that's something else that people don't really talk about, is the worry that comes with being a parent. You don't realize how much your parents do for you until you're in the same position. And I am so grateful to my mom and dad because I know how much they went through. I have a huge shout out and kudos to any mom, whether you have one baby or you have 16 babies. You are incredible. You are amazing. What you are capable of and what you go through for your child is incredible. And like I said, people, I don't think really talk about that. They don't talk about lying awake at night, being concerned that something will happen to your child. You know, you hear about SIDS and things like that. And I think that's another problem that people don't talk about, is being over-informed, because you hear all these different things. So this child passed away because they were left in their car seat while they were asleep, or this child passed away because they choked on their vomit while they were sleeping, or this child just stopped breathing and we don't know why. Like, there's so many different things, but that's the reality of life. You can't control life. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know, if your child is going to be okay with something or allergic to, you just don't know. As a parent, it's a guessing game. And I think that's something that parents, on YouTube especially, or just in life, they put on this facade like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I've read all the parenting books. I've listened to all the CDs. I've watched all the TV shows. Like, I know what I'm doing. I've watched documentaries and all these different things. And the truth is none of us know what we're doing. We are literally playing a guessing game. We are playing, what we think is going to be best for our child. And that is the reality, is you're going to do what you think is going to be best for your child, what is best for you and your family. And there's nothing wrong with that. And you can't fault a mom for doing something or not knowing, because there is so much to know about having a new child. So don't start the mom shaming and saying, oh, this mom, she co-sleeps, or this mom, she doesn't put her baby in the crib, or, oh, they didn't start a sleep schedule. There's so much about a baby that one person cannot know everything. Even people who specialize in pediatric care, they don't know everything. It's called practicing medicine for a reason. Doctors don't know everything. You don't know everything, and that's okay. This is just part of life, is figuring things out and figuring out how to best work for your child. And that goes into the whole mom guilt thing. Many nights I'm like, I go to bed and I put her asleep and I'm like, did I hold her enough today? Did I talk to her enough? Did I play with her enough? Did she get enough food? There's all these things that run through your mind, and you just have to give yourself a break and say, I did the best I could. I am going to do everything I can tomorrow to do the same thing. I love my child. I have put in all the effort and all the time, and that's the best I can do. And you have to cut yourself a break, and don't listen to these other parents telling you you're not doing it right, or, oh, there's a problem because you didn't do this or you didn't do that, or, oh, your child passed away, it's your fault. It's not. Because the reality is, nobody knows what they're doing. No mom is going to know exactly what is right for every child. It's just not the reality of life. So cut yourself a break. Cut other people a break, and don't go after people because they made a decision. Some people don't know, and maybe that for their baby is the best decision. You don't know. You don't know their life. You don't know their circumstances. You don't know what's going on. So try to be compassionate and loving and supporting and understanding for new moms, for any mom, because sometimes all they need to know is they're doing a good job. So there's my little bit. I'm going to step off my soapbox on mom guilt, because I think that and mom shaming and all of that, it's just so easy to just kind of go off on that tangent. But that's another thing, is take everybody's opinion for what it's worth. It's a grain of salt. If you think that that's going to work for you, great. If they're being rude or, hateful or anything like that, just take it with a grain of salt and understand that you're doing the best you can and you know what's best. Ultimately, you are the person. You don't have to listen to what everybody is saying, and you can do what you feel is best because you're that baby's mom. Next thing I want to talk about is mom brain, which I had mentioned before earlier in this video that mom brain is a real thing. For me, it is so bad. Before, I really struggled with my memory. I didn't always remember things very well, but now in a moment, I will forget exactly what I went into a room for, or what I was supposed to do, 5 minutes ago, or I forget things that I've literally had on repeat throughout my whole life, or I have it scheduled or whatever. So the only way that I can combat that is with a calendar, which I highly recommend. I don't do paper calendars because I'm really bad about carrying them with me. But for some people that works really well. My personal preference is to actually have it in my phone on my calendar. I have Google Calendars, and that's how I keep track of everything. So that works really well, but I feel like that's something that people joke about a lot, but that's a reality, is mom brain. Sometimes you forget, or sometimes you will have done something a million times a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're doing it differently and you don't know why, or you forget to do it the right way. And that's just the reality. It's just mom brain. Another thing that people probably don't really talk about is, actually, I think I've heard it talked about a lot more now than I ever did before, but postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. Those are both very real things. And if you feel like you're struggling with that, you really should talk to your doctor, because there are things that they can do to help. There are things that they can recommend. I personally didn't really struggle with that, and I'm really grateful for that because I know how hard it can be on a mom. But understand that if you do struggle with those things, it is not only you. There are a million other parents out there that have gone through the same thing. There is help, and you can talk to your doctor about that, and they will give you the resources to help yourself. Don't think that you have to keep that burden to yourself and that you can't ask for help, because you can, and it's okay. And as a mom, you need to take care of yourself as well as your child, not just your child. So I can't really speak too much more on that because, like I said, I didn't experience that, so I haven't had any firsthand experience with dealing with those sorts of things, but know that there are plenty of people out there who have. As far as being a new mom, you're going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to be able to do it all. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you don't want somebody to help with holding your child, be sure to ask them to cook a meal or come over and clean or whatever that may be, even if you just need somebody to come and talk to you and hang out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with reaching out for help. You do not have to do it all on your own. Nobody expects you to be this super mom who can do it all. First few weeks especially, your life and your house is going to be a mess. And that's okay. That is the reality of motherhood. You're going to have a million appointments. You're going to be constantly going, in and out of places. Some parents, they just stay home with their child, and that's okay too. I didn't have that luxury because not only did I have appointments for my baby, but I also had appointments for myself. I also had a few surgeries and things like that. If you want to know more about that, feel free to check out some of my other videos on my channel, and you can kind of get a little bit more of a background on what my pregnancy was like. But just understand that you're doing the best you can. You're going to make it. It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to figure things out. There's going to be a lot of frustration because your life really isn't yours anymore. You are following the schedule of another little person. You are going based off of what they want and what they need, and that's just how life is going to be. Welcome to parenthood. I knew that going into it, but I feel like some parents don't understand that. They don't know that. They don't understand that there is going to be a change. Your child comes first, and what they want and need, that is what matters, and that is what is going to drive your life from here until the day they move out. And for some parents, even after that point, their children still come first, and they still kind of dictate how things go. But as far as that frustration goes, you're going to have different priorities. You may not be able to, watch your favorite TV show all the time, or you may not be able to get those chores done that you want to, or film your video on the day you want to, or edit when you want to. That's just the reality. That's okay. You just work around it. It may not be the most convenient thing. It may not be exactly what you want, but it's what your child needs. And so that's just how things work. You're also probably going to be really frustrated with constantly feeling like a baby is needing to be fed or changed or burped or held or whatever, because it's a constant cycle. You're constantly going through these things. It's just one thing after another, especially when they're first born. They need a lot of attention, and as they get older, it's less and less. But that's just something to keep in mind. So it's going to be exhausting. You're probably going to feel like you're doing the same thing all the time. I know I did when I first brought Novali home, and it was a lot. And I was frustrated because I just wanted something different, and I just wanted my life back. But I had my life the whole time. It just was in a different way. I never lost who I was or what I had. I just gained a different perspective. I gained a different lifestyle. I gained an amazing, sweet little girl that I get to call my own. So try to keep a positive perspective on things. When you're so frustrated with your baby crying because you can't help them, remember everything that you went through to get there. Another thing is food restrictions. I don't think people really think about that after you give birth, because everybody's like, okay, well, during birth, during pregnancy, there are certain foods you can't eat. Well, for some people, there's certain foods you can't eat after you give birth. Like if your baby is lactose intolerant, or like beans if it gives them gas, or things like, there's certain food restrictions, and it's different for everybody. I'm not going to go through a whole list of that, but that's also something I feel like people don't really think about, is having to deal with those food restrictions after you give birth. So there's another food for thought. The last thing I wanted to touch on was just kind of postpartum body. And I'm not going to go too much into this, but there is so much that changes in your body when you have a baby. Everybody knows that. You're carrying this child inside of you, this other life. Your stomach is going to stretch out. You're going to have stretch marks. Some people don't, and you are so lucky if you don't. I do, personally. I have extra saggy skin. That may never go away. For some people, they choose to have procedures done or things like that. I'm not going to do that. I don't know if I'm going to have more kids, but I'm not going to do that, because to me that's just not worth it. For other people it is, and there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't mean they're ashamed of what they've done or who they are, but that's just their personal choice. But not only do you have that, but you've got the exhaustion, you've got your lady bits downstairs that are all disheveled, especially for the first while. You're going to be afraid to have intimacy with your husband or your partner or whatever after you give birth, because you just pushed a child out of there. The last thing you want is to be thinking about those sorts of things. There's everything that changes with your body, your hormones. You're going to be crying over the silliest things, or getting really angry over something so stupid as a piece of trash that was left on the floor or left on the table or whatever. And that's just, like I said, the reality of being a new parent. Your body is going to change from carrying that life inside of you. There's nothing wrong with it. You are not broken. You are not less important or unattractive because of that. Take your time, heal properly. Don't force yourself right away into a workout routine trying to get your body back, because guess what? It's never going to be the same as it was before you had a child. You carried a life inside of you. You are never going to be the same again, and that is a great and beautiful thing. And I don't want you to take all of the negatives out of this video and say, oh, I'm not going to have a baby because there's so many bad things about having a baby. There are drawbacks, but there are so many benefits. That little girl that I gave birth to, Novalie, she is the sweetest thing, and I love her to pieces, and seeing her smile and try and laugh and figuring things out in life is so precious, and it is a beautiful thing, and I would do it all over again for her. I absolutely would. I had a horrific pregnancy, and it gave me a lot of, pregnancy PTSD, if you could say that, and anxiety and things like that about having another child, because it was a lot. It was kind of traumatic for me, to be honest. And I wouldn't want to do that part again. However, if I had to do it all over again for her, I 100% would, because she is my world and I love her to death. So no, and I'm not going to say everything's going to be worth it and it'll all be worth it in the end, because I know that throughout my pregnancy that was the last thing I wanted to hear, because I felt like crap, and that's just not what I wanted to hear. But you are going to have this amazing gift, and you are going to get to watch them grow and laugh and play and explore, and there's going to be so much adventure and excitement and happiness in your life just from that sweet little thing, that 9-10 months of pregnancy that you have, you're going to forget about it. And when they say that you forget about it, you really do. Like I said, my pregnancy was really rough. My delivery was a little bit rough. But I don't remember a whole lot of that because I'm choosing to focus on the good things, the positive things. I want to remember how it felt to hold my sweet little girl for the first time after waiting so long just to see what she looked like. I can't wait to see her grow into the person that she's going to be. I want to see her personality develop and see what she's going to look like. Is she going to look more like her dad or me or a mixture of us both? I can't wait for those things. So for me, it really was worth it in the end. Those are my little things that I wanted to kind of talk about in, kind of the reality of life postpartum, because I feel like there's a lot of those things that probably aren't mentioned quite as much as they should be, or talked about as much as they should be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe down below. It is completely free for you, so don't worry about having to pay or anything like that. But Novalee just woke up. She is crying for me, so I'm going to end this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please head over to my Instagram, which is at Ashley_Elyse19, and follow me over there for video updates, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Bye.